Yeah, we can go ahead and call the meeting to order, and then I'll call attendance.
Okay. So, call the meeting to order. Thanks everybody for attending. You can call attendance or?
You can call or I can call. I'm happy to call. Would you like to call? You're welcome to call. Doesn't matter. Sandy, that's why. I think it doesn't matter. I can, but you can too if you would.
You call this time and I'll call next time.
Yeah, there's some names I've pronounced wrong. Okay, so we have Mrs. Sarah Midley,
Here.
Donna Chen,
Here.
Stuart Gardner.
Yes.
Jose Gomez. He is ill. He said he might join on Zoom, but he has a cold. Patrick Healy.
Here. Here.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
Would you state the reason you're participating online virtually? Can you hear us?
Yes.
So you're supposed to state the reason why you're virtually attending. Patrick, are you able to do that?
What's that?
You're supposed to state the reason why you're virtually attending.
Oh, because I'm not in the city of Charlottesville or Albemarle County. I'm out of town.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Ethan Pyle said he cannot be here. Lee Condor is
Here.
present. Marty Meth.
Here, I'm on Zoom and I had a lot of conflicts. I couldn't make it downtown.
Thank you. Nathan Moore. Ms. Chapman Moon. Danny Yoder said he might join on Zoom if he can. Peter Thompson. There he is. And then Greg Weaver.
Here.
Oh, yeah. I don't think we have a quorum today.
We don't have a quorum.
We can now vote them in.
Well, are there any members of the public here today who want to speak?
I'm here, but I have nothing to add.
Thank you. In that case, then we can review and accept the agenda. Anybody have any comments? So, well, make a motion to approve the agenda.
Well, we can't vote on anything. It's
Can't
not
vote.
quorum, so
Okay.
agenda will have to do as is.
Yeah, that's true.
Do it as is. You can give it a thumbs up or down. Yeah. I think it's a lovely agenda. Thank you. Then we have, were there any comments on the minute meetings from last time? I did see that my name
No.
was.
Or in section 3, you were misidentified as Sarah Healy.
I noted that too.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that fix that typo, and otherwise it's good to go.
Section 3.
Yeah,
I think you said page 4.
but we can't vote on it.
Okay.
That makes my job a little easier. Okay, any other comments on the agenda or on the meeting minutes from last time? Okay. So we can move on to new business. I think that is you, Taylor.
That is me. Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Jenkins. So this is my second CTAC meeting, but the first time I'm joining in person. So thought it would be good to reintroduce myself. I'm not sure if everyone was on that last meeting, but I started January 16th with the PDC as their Director of Transportation. Previously, I came from Michael Baker International, an engineering and consulting firm doing transit planning work. And then before that, I was at DRPT for about 4 years doing transit planning work. So very excited to be here. Just moved to Charlottesville about 2 weeks ago. So I'm also brand new, but just from Richmond. So not very far, but still. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, and I'll come up so that I can move through the pages. All right, so today we're going to talk about the fiscal year 26 UPWP, the Unified Planning Work Program for the MPO. And so that will cover July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Okay, so the UPWP, the purpose of it is to identify all of the transportation planning activities that MPO staff will undertake for the next fiscal year. So it really guides our work and prioritizes the things that we will basically spend our federal money on. It should represent the major regional priorities and serve that through the work that we do. Federal law requires that the metropolitan planning process addresses 10 specific planning factors. So those are in the UPWP draft. A few of them are right here on the screen: economic vitality, maintenance, security, things like that. And so we have edited this section for next fiscal year just to include 4 other items that were adopted as part of the fiscal year 24 long range transportation plan. And those include equity, quality of life, climate action, and land use. And we specifically want to bring the UPWP in alignment with the long range transportation plan because it had a lot of public engagement in our long range plan. And so these are things that the community really expressed their interest in, and that these are their priorities for the region. So we want to bring the UPWP in line with those. So the bulk of the UPWP funding is 80% federal, and that primarily comes from Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. And the remainder, we have state dollars that are in there and also a local match. This just identifies the funding by source, and everything that you see there in red is because these are pretty much kind of placeholders, holdovers from last year. We do have updated numbers from FHWA and VDOT now, so those can be updated, and it's slightly more than what you see on your screen. So that will be revised, but we still haven't received our allocations from FTA and DRPT yet. We expect those probably around the beginning of April. So we will be able to adopt those with the final before we hit that. And here is a breakdown of the budget by task. And so this year, for the fiscal year 26 UPWP, historically, I've been told that we've spent a little bit more on admin costs than we have been able to capture with the budget. So we upped the percentage on that one, and we also lowered the percentage for task 2, long range transportation planning, just because we're not in an LRTP year. And so it makes sense that more of our funds would be going toward those short range things, such as local technical assistance, helping out with grant applications if that's needed, any local studies that might be going on, more of those short-term tasks. A few administrative changes in there. We specifically removed line item budgets for the subtasks just to align with similar practices of other MPOs and reduce the admin burden on staff for maintaining this document. There will still be a line item budget that you'll see in a couple of slides that will be maintained internally, just so we can always keep an eye on how much we're spending on each of our tasks. But just to give us a little bit more flexibility and to remove a little of that admin burden, we took those out of the document itself. And as I mentioned previously, we also increased the percentage of the work program budget that went to administration. Other changes, task 3 just had a name change to be a little bit more specific. The UPWP is also a really important guide for staff. And so when we're thinking, where do we bill our time? It's important that this is as detailed and explicit language-wise as possible so that it's very clear and apparent where that time is being billed. And here are the line item budgets for each of the tasks that we will be maintaining internally. So program administration includes things like reporting, completing invoices, staffing committees, public outreach. That would mostly be for website updates, plan updates, and any actual public outreach associated with a project would be billed wherever that actual task is. And also professional development, attending meetings for information sharing. So attending maybe a CTP meeting, any recurring VDOT meetings that might happen, really anything that would keep our staff up to date on what's happening in transportation to be able to share that with our committees, share that with other staff members. For task 2, long-range transportation planning, we are still completing the Move Safely Blue Ridge Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, and that is set for mid-fiscal year 26 completion, so that one will be carried over. Continuing to update our travel demand model. That is a project that's currently ongoing, that's due to wrap up at the end of the year. A travel demand management study is included in this task, as well as a coordinated human services mobility plan update. We don't quite have a scope of work for that one yet, but DRPT has let us know that they are updating that plan and there might be some involvement from MPO staff on that one. And if there are any amendments or revisions to the existing long-range transportation plan, that would fall under task 2 as well. And for task 3, short-range transportation planning, that includes some of the things that I mentioned before. So any support for smart scale stars, project pipeline, if there are any regional planning for transit, bike ped support, our performance targets would fall under here, and any special studies and projects that maybe weren't explicitly captured. So that might be if a locality is conducting some kind of study that we didn't capture here, maybe an electric vehicle study, maybe someone needs support updating a chapter of a comp plan or something like that. Those would fall under that last category. Okay, so next steps for this. It has already gone through a couple committees and right now it is on track for an April 15th final draft to the MPO technical committee. And then on April 23rd, it would go back to the MPO Policy Board for approval with the minor changes for the budget updates that I mentioned. And if there were any comments and feedback from you all, we would also look to incorporate those before that April 23rd date. And I think that's the last one. Yeah. Any questions or kind of initial comments or reactions for the UPWP?
I have a question about the budget. Like, who does this, like, who do you report the budget to?
Yeah.
Like, if you're keeping track of the different line items, like
Yeah.
internal, yeah.
So we have to submit invoices every month for the work that we do. And so when we submit those, the reviewer, whether that's VDOT or DRPT, they also look at the task for where we're billing our money and what the progress report is. So we submit, a document that says, here's what we worked on during this reporting period, and they make sure that it aligns with our contract and the things that are in our UPWP.
This is the budget, this is for the full MPO?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Oh, you're right, you're right.
We have,
Who's next?
I don't count. No, you count, I don't count. I don't count. 4, 5, 6, and then virtual. They have to be in person. So who am I missing? Oh, no, you're right, so that's just 6.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
oh, okay.
One more person dying.
Okay, all right, sorry.
No. So close.
No, it's okay. Let me just. Yeah.
Yeah.
And are we already sharing our screen and everything?
Yes, yeah, but we could, yeah. I guess you're gonna introduce yourself and.
Sure.
Well,
Thank you so much
Is
for
that
being
the,
here.
So
So
what
it looks
is
like
here
the
is a PDF.
PDF,
Yeah,
yeah.
so let's reshare our screen.
Oh,
share
yeah,
that.
that's true. Yes, please, thank you. Yes, thank you. Whichever you choose. That's one, yep. Okay. No, it's not, it's not full screen yet.
Yeah. Just
Let me-
just duplicate. All right, while we're working through the technology stuff, so I'm Mike Fontaine, I work at the Virginia Transportation Research Council. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, we're the research division of VDOT. We are located on grounds at UVA. And for those of you that know Jose Gomez, Jose is a former director of the Research Council. If Jose were here, I wish he was here because I could embarrass him that 30 years ago, he wrote one of my recommendation letters for grad school when I was an undergrad. So
I'm here, only not here, Michael. Thank you for the introduction.
I think I saw that today too.
Because I don't think he can see the slides.
Yeah, you can just take it out, presenter view, maybe. If you uncheck
Doesn't change
that,
over here. I think here is good. But if you move, then I don't know.
Yeah, it's not advancing on here.
I would leave it as it was before.
Okay.
All right, that'll work.
We'll do that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No, it's okay.
Thank you, and I apologize to, this has been previously presented at the technical committee and the policy committee, so I apologize to everyone who's already heard this presentation. So today I'm going to be talking about VDOT Smart Intersection Pilot that includes some sites in Albemarle County, which is why it might be of interest to this group. So just by way of context, what we see is that intersections are often a very critical place for us in terms of safety. We see that, a disproportionate amount of fatalities and injuries occur at intersections because it's a very complicated place. There's lots of crossing maneuvers, lots of decisions for both cars and bicycles and pedestrians to make at that intersection. And what we see is that the severity of crashes is even greater for bikes and pedestrians than it is for vehicles. They're much more exposure, much more at risk. So what we're going to be talking about today is smart intersection. So what is a smart intersection? So in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of advancement in the field of detection of vehicles and bicycles and pedestrians and users at intersections. So we've traditionally relied on inductive loops, which are essentially coils of wire in the pavement to detect vehicles. There's been a lot of advancement in video analytics, so using cameras to detect these users, as well as applications of LiDAR and radar for this kind of system. And these technologies have been around for a while, but costs have come way down. The processing capabilities have gone way up with some of the advances in machine learning and some other approaches that we have out there. And so what this does is this creates an opportunity for us to actually track trajectories of users of the intersection in real time as they go through. So like a traffic signal normally just kind of detects whether a car is there or not, but it doesn't track it through the intersection. So these systems can actually track the paths of the users, which allows us to look at things that we couldn't normally look at, like near misses. So, we've often been very reactive in the traffic engineering world, where we wait for crashes to happen, then try and fix it. This gives us an opportunity to collect data and try and identify risky situations that are happening and correct them before something tragic happens. So that's one opportunity that this affords us. The other option is that by tracking these trajectories, we can interface with the controller that runs the traffic signal and do some things that could also help us from a safety perspective. If we've got a red light and we're tracking a vehicle approaching the intersection and it's clear that that vehicle is not going to stop in time at that red light, we could potentially hold an all red phase so that nobody else enters the intersection because that red light runner is getting ready to come through. Or if we have someone who's slow to cross in a crosswalk, maybe we hold that walk phase a little bit longer to allow that person to complete their crossing maneuver. And then if we think down the road, we talk a lot about vehicle connectivity and automation. We're not there today, but maybe 10 years from now, there's going to be an opportunity for us to transmit warnings into the vehicle. If there's like a pedestrian in the crosswalk, someone's approaching the intersection, we can warn them that pedestrian's there. So basically the pilot I'm going to talk about is funded by a program called the Innovation and Technology Transportation Fund, which the General Assembly established. It's basically an opportunity for us to pilot high technology projects that can improve safety or mobility. And so back in 2022, $1 million was allocated in order to pilot these smart intersection technologies in order to try and see what kind of benefit we could have. So basically this project has been conducted in two phases. The first phase, which is complete, occurred up in Northern Virginia and Fairfax County. There were 2 intersections up there where we tested out a bunch of different systems to try and figure out which system worked the best and seemed to be the most promising. And then we're in phase 2 right now, which is expanding this testing elsewhere in the state. And so we're going to be doing 4 intersections in Culpeper District, specifically in Albemarle County, and then 4 in Salem District, mainly in Blacksburg and Montgomery County. And so essentially what we're trying to do is kind of stress test these technologies. We found the ones that seem to work pretty well up in Northern Virginia, and now we're trying to apply them in a variety of situations to see if they still work in a variety of contexts, and also will they work over a long period of time. I mean, anytime we put technology in the field, we worry about something might work great out of the box, but 6 months later, exposed to the elements, is it still working well? Or maybe it works great in the summertime, you start putting snow and ice on it, everything falls apart. And so we're trying to see how this works in a variety of contexts. So we're working with the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, that they're one of the universities we work with quite a bit on technology projects. And they're doing a lot of the work for this effort. Okay, so what I'm gonna do before I start talking about what's going to happen in Albemarle County, let me tell you a little bit about what we found up in Northern Virginia to kind of lay the groundwork here. So we tested it at Route 29 in Nutley and Route 50 in Nutley in Fairfax County. We tested 4 different systems. One of them used LiDAR that cost about $36,000 an intersection. Another one just used a pure camera-based system. And we actually had 2 camera-based systems, excuse me. And then we had one system that used a data fusion of machine vision and also radar to detect these users. And so we wanted to look at, okay, first of all, is it accurately detecting both vehicles and all the other users of the intersection? Could it actually determine correctly that someone was there? And then we also wanted to test these near miss safety systems. Was it able to accurately identify when we had a safety critical event that we might be concerned about? And then we also collected independent data by Virginia Tech in order to verify everything worked. So this is kind of what it looked like. So we spent a lot of time because we had 4 systems deployed simultaneously at the same intersection because we wanted to test them under exactly the same conditions at this location. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out where everything was. And so this is kind of the Frankenstein's monster we have over here on the right when we put all 4 at once. This is not what the Albemarle County sites will look like, because we will have one system there and it's going to be much cleaner. It's not going to have as much up on the signal pole. And so we went out and we worked with the vendors to make sure the systems were configured properly. Upper left-hand corner shows the configuration module for the LiDAR system. So that's basically creating like a point cloud of users that are coming through the intersection. The bottom left corner is showing the video detection system. This is essentially used like a fisheye camera so that you can get a 360-degree view from one camera rather than have to put 4 cameras to capture each approach. And then on the right side is showing the independent video data collection that we did in order to sort of verify that what the systems are detecting is in fact happening in reality. All right, so this is the technical background. Now let's talk about what this will actually do. So I'm going to show you, this is going to be the system that's going to be actually deployed in Albemarle County. So this is a video-based system. And so what I want you to do once the video starts, you'll see this vehicle is turning left. It's highlighted in red. We're going to have a vehicle come out the bottom of the screen. It's going to run the red light. It's going to strike the vehicle. And so this is being detected in real time by this system. And so we can imagine a situation where if this system was available, you could automatically notify police, EMS, fire to respond a little bit more quickly rather than relying on 911 call to have someone come and respond to this location. Other interesting things it can do, wrong way drivers. You would be amazed at how many wrong way drivers we detected at these 2 intersections in Northern Virginia. This video is going to play here. This car is going to intentionally drive the wrong way down the road. This is at 9 p.m. at night, by the way. This is not at 2 a.m. And we're not sure if the person's impaired in some way, or there's a median there that you can see, and there's a driveway into a shopping center. If they just didn't want to go all the way down to the next light and pull a U-turn, and they decided they were going to try and do this to save themselves 20 seconds of time. So there was, I think it was surprising to all of us how many events like this that we saw. And this is something we would never know about because there was never a crash report. And so this is the kind of thing that this gives us insight into that we wouldn't normally have that insight. Near misses. So this is where I think there's real power here, where we see a lot of near misses for every crash that happens. So you're going to see a case here where an SUV is going to come from the right side of the screen. It's going to go around this right turn, not yield, and you can see how close that person came to being hit by the vehicle that's coming through here. And so this is, again, something we would never know about because luckily that oncoming driver reacted and was able to slow down enough that they didn't strike that vehicle turning right. But again, clearly very risky behavior. Now, where where we're really interested in this is from the bicycle and pedestrian side. So we've seen a significant uptick in bicycle and pedestrian fatalities in Virginia that has kind of mirrored national trends, especially post-pandemic. And it's really hard for us to diagnose where the bike and pedestrian problems are, because even though it's gone up, it's still a small number of incidents relative to the vehicular crashes. But this allows us to look at risky behaviors that happen that thankfully don't result in a tragedy. So I'm going to show you a video here, and I'm going to offer this as context, not to condone what this person did, because what this person did is clearly outside the realm of rational decision-making. But this intersection has crosswalks on 3 approaches. He's going to cross on the one approach that does not have a crosswalk. And so you're going to see him come up from the bottom, and he's just going to walk straight into traffic and rely on people to stop. And you're going to see this red pickup truck, and look at how much the nose of that pickup truck drops to slam on his brakes in order to avoid hitting this person. So you can see, again, this is something where clearly this is a very unsafe behavior that we would like to know about, but we would have no way of knowing this happened because it didn't result in a crash, thank goodness. So from this, what we can do is we can generate these heat maps like we have over here on the left, which show where we have relatively high density of these near miss events. And so this might lead us to certain countermeasures that we might want to try. So for example, if we look in the upper right-hand corner, that's where that SUV kind of whipped around the corner without slowing down. You can kind of see that the radius of that corner is very gradual, which allows someone to try and make those very high-speed maneuvers. If we see this density of near misses there, perhaps we need to look at that corner. Maybe there's an opportunity to change the corner radii, force people into a slower turn maneuver. Maybe that could reduce things, just as an example. I'm not saying that's the right solution, but that might be something to think about. And then on the right side, we can even look at like what's the distribution of these near miss events by hour of the day. And so this might help us out. So if we say, okay, maybe there's something about the traffic signal timing we need to tweak at a certain time of day. Or if people are just behaving in a way that is antisocial, maybe this is when the police need to be out there and enforcing behavior in order to try and get safer behavior at the intersection. So you can see kind of visually the kinds of things that we can get out of this. So not to dwell too much on the data. So one of the things we want to look at is, okay, first of all, are these systems working the way they claim to out of the box? Are they counting the cars? Are they counting the bikes and the pedestrians? And generally what we saw was that the vision-based systems worked a lot better than the other systems. The LiDAR system totally fell apart when it began to rain. The rain was enough to interfere with the beams of light that the LiDAR system was emitting. The radar system didn't work very well either because it had problems maintaining a lock on vehicles and pedestrians to traverse the intersection. So like one car might get picked up as 5 separate cars as it went through because it would pick it up and lose it. So the vision-based systems seemed to work the best. They worked better for vehicles than for bikes and pedestrians, but given that we have no bike and pedestrian data at all collected regularly at these intersections, being off by 10% isn't the end of the world. It's better data than what we have now. So it's still moving us in an area where we can start to quantify what is going on with the pedestrians. Now, looking at these safety critical events that they identified. So we went through and looked at a subset of the events that occurred, tried to look at were safety, we looked at from, I guess, 2 perspectives. One, was it detecting things that numerically appeared to be correct? So like if we said that 2 vehicles, if they were within 2 seconds of colliding with one another, that's a safety critical event. Did it identify that? But then we also looked at it subjectively, because we could have cases, you know, for example, I was on the downtown mall a few weeks ago before the policy board meeting. I was crossing one of the vehicular crossings. There was a vehicular crossing. He was going slowly through. As he passed me, I started walking behind him. I was very close in spatial proximity to that car. But there was no safety critical event there because he was going that way and I was going this way. And I was, you know, I might have been within a foot of him, but there was no danger he was going to hit me unless he threw it in reverse. And so we looked at how often did we have things like this, or maybe there was a close thing, but you could see that the driver was like waving to the pedestrian to go in front of them, that they were making eye contact and things like that. And so, you know, numerically, we could see that it worked, but you still had to apply some engineering judgment to say, okay, was this really a safety problem? We don't just want to use the raw data. Probably the most interesting thing we saw was the wrong way stuff that I saw. You see that the detection was the worst for that. The thing that caused the most problems with that was people towing cars and cars on car carriers. So if we had a car going to a car dealership with a bunch of cars on it, it thought all those cars loaded on backwards were driving the wrong way down the road. So again, it's a case where the technology gets us part of the way there, but human knowledge is still important to interpreting the data. So basically from all this, this allowed us to kind of down select which systems appear to be working the best. So where we're at right now in phase 2 is we're beginning procurement and installation of the systems, both in Montgomery County and in Albemarle. In Montgomery County, most of our locations are in the area around Virginia Tech. If there's anybody here that's a tech grad, probably the most interesting one is probably at Beamer and Southgate, right by Lane Stadium. So that should generate some very interesting data on football game days. Here in Albemarle, we've got 4 tentative sites that we've selected. Basically where we're at right now is we're working with the VDOT Culpeper District to basically evaluate and make sure that the equipment can actually be physically installed at these sites. You know, we're looking at things like, is there room in the traffic signal controller cabinet for the additional equipment? Can the mast arms, you know, handle the additional sensors that we're going to put on it, things like that. So of these 3, the one that I think is probably most likely to change is the Ivy and Old Ivy Road intersection. That's an interesting one because of the narrow railroad bridge right there, as well as the weird intersection geometry we have with the car wash that's right there on the corner. But we're not sure that the mast arm that goes across the road can handle the additional weight of the equipment. And so we're being evaluated by the Culpeper District Structure and Bridge now. For the other ones, Alderman McCormick, that's going to be a very interesting one for us. As Donna knows, I think you've seen every type of possible user at that intersection. You know, I've seen people on motorized unicycles, I've seen everything. And so I think that will be interesting, especially looking at the student crossing behavior that we see there on a regular basis. Hydraulic and lambs, that's right by Albemarle High School. That's going to be interesting given the pedestrian traffic, but also there's the speed camera that's right there. That could be an interesting aspect of that site. And then the Route 29 and Ryle overpass, we want to look at that because we want to see how well do these systems handle. We've got a very big intersection. You know, if they're fairly tight and compact, like Alderman McCormick, it's fairly easy to sense what's going on. You talk about something big like that large overpass over Route 29, that's going to be much harder for these systems to handle. So one thing I do want to emphasize here is, you know, what we're doing is a technology evaluation, not a site evaluation. So we're testing whether the technology works, is detecting properly, and is performing adequately. We're not necessarily saying, okay, these are safety issues occurring at each of these intersections. That being said, the Culpeper District for VDOT is very involved with this. They're going to have access to all this data. And so obviously, if trends start emerging in the data, they'll be plugged in if there's anything that we want to try and look at and remediate. And so they've been very intimately involved in both the selection and the ongoing monitoring of these sites.
Can you just curious how those sites were selected as opposed to thousands of other options?
Okay, great question. So it was a combination of things. So first of all, we were trying to find locations where we knew that we had enough non-vehicular traffic that we would be able to stress test its ability to pick up bikes and pedestrians. You know, if we were looking at, you know, some intersections on, you know, rural 250 or something, we probably wouldn't have a whole lot of non-vehicular users out there. So we wanted to look at where we thought we'd have good non-car activity. The second piece to that is we wanted to look at where we thought it was likely we could accommodate the equipment. And then the third piece was we wanted to get at least some intersections that were not connected to the VDOT network. And I'll explain why on the next slide. That was another key thing that we wanted to look at. So, but probably the main driver for us, our initial down selection is where do we think we have enough bicyclists and pedestrians to generate interesting data to see whether these systems were working. Because if all we want to do is detect vehicular data, there's a lot of other systems out there that will do this, you know, pretty well. Okay, so basically what we're doing from a detection perspective is we're going to look at the detection accuracy and the safety critical event accuracy like we did up in Northern Virginia and make sure that's still working. the reason why we wanted to look for some locations that were not connected to the VDOT network is we also wanted to explore the ability of these systems to work with the traffic signal controller. So one thing I want to emphasize is while this deployment's going on, we're going to be running the signal the same as we always have. We're going to use the traditional detection. It's going to be running the same way that it always has. Now, VDOT in the state has very strict IT cybersecurity requirements. And the minute you connect a new piece of technology to the network, it triggers an entirely exhaustive level of scrutiny of that piece of technology. So what we want to do is find a few locations that were not on the VDOT network so that we could essentially run the system in parallel with what is out there now and emulate the traffic controller at the intersection so that we could test these ideas like, could we hold the red light and prevent a red light running crash if we detect that someone's going to approach? Or could we hold the walk phase a little bit longer if someone was slow to get through the intersection? And so that's why we wanted to be off the network so that we could do that in an air-gapped way with the rest of the network. And so that's driving a lot of this. So we wanted to look at, okay, could it activate properly? Could we look at how often people are running the red light and all these things that we got to be tied into the traffic and signal controller in order to do. And that's not something we can do if it's connected to our network because our IT folks would not let us do that, at least within the time frame that we want to use in order to complete this project. So just to give you a flavor for the schedule. So basically we're buying and installing everything through June of this year. We're in the process of doing all the purchasing and procurement. The evaluation and assessment will happen from July through January of 2026. So this will be good that we'll get some winter data in here as well as summertime data so we can test how this works in different weather conditions. It'll also be interesting to look at how, since we're going to be testing a vision-based system here in Albemarle, how like the angle of the sun starts to impact things. You know, the sunlight starts shining into the camera. Will that impact detection? And then basically by middle of 2026, that's when we'll transition this from a research project into something that's handed over to Culpeper District, assuming performance merits it, for them to operate and maintain moving forward. So we're kind of in this evaluation mode for about a little over or a little under another year or so here. So I guess that's the summary of what we're doing. So happy to take any other questions that you all have. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Michael, for this. I think first it's neat, and I can see the good data that can come out of it. However, I am very concerned about police and surveillance state. So like a 2-in-1 question for you. My first question is, how is personal data protected in here? Is like the video information of everyone's faces and license plates and stuff sent to the police, or is there an expiration date on the video data? And then the second question I have, you mentioned that the system would be able to control all the lights in an intersection. So I'm wondering who has control over that ultimately. Like, can the police track somebody who they want to track, going through intersections, and then flip of the switch, just blanket turn off all red light all intersections, etc.
Okay, so let me start answering questions. Let me know if I miss anything as I go through. So first thing I guess I want to emphasize, this is an analytical and traffic control tool, not an enforcement tool. So and I should have mentioned that earlier, that this is not intended to do like red light enforcement or anything like that. So the legal standards for what's required to issue like a automated speed enforcement ticket or a red light running ticket are not met by this system. And this is not intended to do that. And the police could not use this to write a ticket, and it would not hold up in court if they tried. So now the second piece of the question is right now, one of the things I guess I want to be clear about is it's VDOT policy that we don't retain video data as part of day-to-day practice. So like the CCTV cameras that we use for like monitoring the freeways and things like that, we stream that data, but nobody records it. And that's a policy decision that VDOT's made, in part because every time there's a crash, then we would be getting Freedom of Information Act requests from lawyers asking for all the recorded video. And we just don't have the administrative manpower to handle those kinds of things. This is being done under a research exemption for the video side. So this video data right now is being housed on a cloud that the vendor maintains, where there's login credentials that only people with proper login credentials can get to. One of the things that we're investigating is, the kinds of things that we're doing with this. And I think the videos are nice because it kind of gives you a feel for what this can do. But what this looks like in actual long-term implementation probably looks very different from what I showed you today. It's probably going to be a case where we record events, not the video. That's one of the reasons why, we're trying the vision systems here in Albemarle County. In Montgomery County, they're doing a mixture of vision systems and a different LiDAR system that we didn't test the first time that appears to work better in rain and inclement weathers. And the LiDAR has a lot of benefits in that there's no pictures or images anywhere in the system. All we have is this point cloud with no identifying information. The resolutions that we have on the cameras right now is not sufficient where you're going to be able to pick up someone's license plate from it, to be honest. I mean, it's not designed to be able to read a license plate, so we shouldn't be able to get that. Right now, police have no access to this system. I don't think there'd be any intention that the police have any access to this system. They don't have any access, their access right now to like a traffic signal is basically through I guess they call it the pickle. It's essentially a device that allows them to change phases, like if they're directing traffic at JPJ or a football game or something like that. So they never get in and actually get into what is going on in the traffic signal controller or have that ability to do that. So we've never had that issue. We've always had kind of a sharp line between where VDOT sort of viewed their role as the traffic management agency and what the police's ability to touch these systems are. So there's when we move to a long-term steady state, once we understand the technology and what works, I will virtually guarantee you that VDOT is not going to be recording or retaining any of this stuff, because we haven't done that in the history of the agency because of all the administrative burdens to it. Did I answer all your questions? I was trying to sort of mentally keep track.
Yeah.
The interesting intersection will be the Ryle and 29, because emergency vehicle overrides on those lights are fairly frequent because the fire station is just up the road, and there are a lot of ambulances that go through there as well. So that should provide an interesting perspective. And I know I walk through that intersection a lot. So the other thing that it could do is you mentioned lengthening crosswalk times for a slow pedestrian, but it could also shorten them for a quicker pedestrian, which would reduce congestion instead of an arbitrarily long time that some of those crosswalks.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think that all of these, and that's one of the reasons why we want to test these with the traffic signal controller, because how they handle like a preemption call for emergency vehicle, it's going to be interesting to see how that works in conjunction with this as a detection system. And so that's one of the things that we want to look at. The idea of dynamically changing the walk phase, that's something that has been talked about within VDOT recently, because I think a lot of localities are starting to look at something called a leading pedestrian interval, where essentially we're letting the walk phase go before the green phase of a conflicting movement, so that pedestrian gets out in the crosswalk and hopefully are more visible to that traffic that's making a right turn or a left turn into that maneuver. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is, like, it'd be great if we had detection that, since we're letting the pedestrian go a little bit earlier, maybe we can terminate that walk phase a little bit earlier if we've cleared that demand. Because then, every minute that we're able to efficiently allocate, I mean, we've got green time at the intersection is like a pie, right? We're dividing it up in order to serve all the movements. And so if we add pieces to the pie for one movement or one user, we're taking it away from someone else. And so that's something I think that would need more research to explore, but that's something that I know folks are interested in. And, I think there's some possible applications there. But quick question. Sarah, I think you had a question.
I did have a question, and it was related to retaining the data. And so during the research study, the data is being retained because you're reviewing it to look at the counts. Usually I had one, is somebody reviewing all of the data to see what, near misses or something might not have been flagged also?
So that would be a manpower intensive
Yeah.
task to look at everything. So the way that we've approached it is to do a random sample
Okay.
of it. You know, if there's 5,000 events out there, I mean, you can kind of get a feel for, you know, look at the y-axis of this chart, you can see, you know, we're talking thousands of events at this intersection. And so unless we're gonna hire, Virginia is gonna hire an army of undergrad students to look at this, I think it's not realistic. So, you know, I think as long as we do a random sample across different times a day, you know, and we're trying to sample across the different event types to understand our different events looking, so that there's not gonna be anybody manually looking at all this stuff.
And then is there any way for anyone to like request access to the camera data that's being recorded for the research study?
So that I would need to talk to Virginia Tech, and there's something called an institutional review board at universities that basically reviews anything that involves collection with human subjects. So we would need to check what Virginia Tech's IRB permissions were, and if they could share that data. And so, you know, Virginia Tech has generally been very open with sharing underlying data out there, but I think we'd have to check what their IRB permissions were.
Okay. And then
And it might, and again, getting to privacy, it may be that before they could release it to a third party, they'd have to do a lot of work de-identifying, because their independent video data collection is higher resolution, I think, than what the system is using. And so it may be that it might not be cost effective for them to do that de-identification of the users, since none of the people walking through have granted it explicit permission to be recorded. They're just, so those would have to be issues that we'd have to work through.
Yeah, and then just regarding this image, so I see like you flagged all those things. Were there any recommendations made for like this intersection for improving safety?
So again, you know, I want to emphasize this was a technology evaluation, not a safety evaluation.
You also said that they weren't, like, the Culpeper district was gonna look at the data that was collected for safety, so it's like a little bit of both, like maybe you don't want. It sounds to me like you don't wanna say that you're gonna be reviewing this data to make safety things, because then.
Well, I think part of the problem is that, you know, really what we're trying to establish is, are these systems working as advertised? And that's what we saw in Northern Virginia, was that a number of the systems did not work as advertised. And I know that's shocking to all of us that deal with vendors, right? That the sales pitch doesn't match reality all the time. And so even though we've down selected to systems that appeared to be more reliable, they were deemed to be reliable at those specific intersections in Northern Virginia, which were nice 90-degree intersections. And, you know, we're putting them in a much more challenging place here. So I can't guarantee the data that we're going to get is going to be deemed of sufficient quality to try and make those decisions.
But if it is, then you will. But if the data is good, then you would want to use it.
Well, you know, it'll become a
process, though.
Hearing. Yeah, you know,
Tech is doing a research study.
Well, I
They're
know
not
that,
gonna look at anything.
I understand, but you also said that the Culpeper district was gonna look at the results and use that.
Yeah, so I think Culpeper District will look at the results in the context of all the other information that they have at these locations. So this is one data point. The crash data we have there is another data point. Things like speeding data and things like that are all there, traffic volume data. So this becomes a piece of the analytical puzzle. It's not going to drive the decisions. So it's possible that we could see cases where the crash data and what this is showing don't match up. And then what do we believe? And so these are going to be questions for like the district traffic engineering staff to work through and see what makes sense. And if there's enough reliable information there that they feel that there's a countermeasure justified. And so I don't want to step on their toes. It's their engineering judgment on how to make these decisions. This just becomes another piece of data that they can use in their assessment.
I think one of the things that we also want to be aware of is not to like prioritize an intersection because we know more about that intersection. Like this gives us information and maybe we can start seeing trends, but you know, this isn't going to be a comprehensive applied situation. So I think there's also sort of this there's going to have to be a discussion about like what does this mean and how do we best use this information to make intersections safer, and what does it tell us, and what cautions do we have? to
Yeah, I think
apply?
that's an excellent point, Sandy. I mean, it's not like this is ubiquitous data where we could do an apples to apples comparison across every intersection in Albemarle County. You know, because these intersections happen to be picked and happen to have space in their traffic signal controller cabinet where we could fit it. That doesn't necessarily mean that these are a bigger problem than a location that perhaps has more demonstrated crash data, for example. So I think all that's gonna have to be weighed.
But if they're happening there, they're probably happening in other places.
There other state DOTs that you know that are using this already, or is this piloted in other states or?
Yeah, so this has been used in a number of other locations. It's actually interesting, these Northern Virginia sites that we did. It caught the eye of the City of Falls Church. And so we've been doing our deployments on just VDOT roads, and City of Falls Church saw this like this, they're deploying it throughout the City of Falls Church. There's also been, each of the vendors has like their own portfolio of projects. So there's been a number of cities and states that have tested these in various situations. It's more common at the city level than at the state level. Part of that's because VDOT is kind of unique, or I won't say unique. VDOT is one of the larger state DOTs in the country. You know, we're the third largest state DOT in the country in terms of lane miles that we may take, behind Texas and North Carolina. Most states only deal with like interstates, and then it's like the counties and cities doing their own roads. So we're a much larger centralized transportation agency than most states have. So, but it's a lot more use at the city level, which also makes sense because that's where you're going to have a lot more opportunity for conflicts between vulnerable road users and vehicles. It tends to be more on city streets than rural county roads and things like that.
One more.
Yeah.
Is there any data out there about why people engage in, I think you said antisocial behavior? Like what's the motivating factors for the pedestrian and the car examples that we saw? Why are people doing that in the first place?
That's a great question. Donna, you might be able to get into that, you know, I mean.
Let me take a stab at it. I mean, we've done some work looking at just how pedestrians' behaviors vary under different contexts. I mean, it doesn't explain any particular single person's behavior, but certainly people's personal risk tolerance affects the way that they choose to cross, for example. And then it's more than just also the traffic infrastructure. I mean, it's hard to tell from that video, but there can also be other things in the context that's motivating someone to cross. Particularly on Water Street, because we did the recordings here, we noticed that at night, the street lighting situation actually really motivated people to make certain decisions that didn't affect it during the day, right? So it's different things, but yeah, I don't know, it's sometimes people will do things that you consider illogical, but it's hard for us to have a complete picture. And sometimes people are just jerks. They'll just do things that don't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think pedestrians, generally speaking, people are going to take the shortest route from point A to point B. And people's tolerance of risk varies considerably. That person that we saw clearly had a much higher risk tolerance than I do for going across the road. But I will say on the driver behavior side, post-pandemic, we've seen some real changes in driver behavior. During the pandemic, people weren't going into the office, traffic was down on the road, speeds picked way up. And people got used to driving in a very aggressive way because there wasn't a lot of cars on the road. Coming out of the pandemic, traffic picked up again as people started coming back in the office. People's behavior didn't change that much. They developed bad habits in the pandemic that they have continued to stick with. And so we see speed-related crashes are way up than where they were pre-pandemic. And I think the other thing that we have is driver distraction. We know is a continued problem, you know, with having so much smartphone, cell phone activity in the car. And then coupled with all that, you know, it's a tough time to be a state trooper now. It's a tough time to be a police officer. And you know, it's difficult to fill law enforcement positions. Traffic law enforcement is way down. And without the threat of enforcement, I think what we've seen is that bad behaviors driving have continued to get worse. And, you know, right now there's not necessarily as much enforcement as we would like to see in order to maintain driving behavior. And I think, you know, I drive 64 home every day, and I can tell you speeds are much worse now, and it's very rare that you see a trooper out there enforcing during the peak hour. And so I think it's a combination of factors, and a lot of things that have happened post-pandemic have kind of reinforced bad driver behavior.
Some places it's legitimately scary now, like.
I think driving anywhere in this community is scary.
Yeah.
I literally, I'm gonna die on the roads of Charlottesville, Albemarle. As either a runner or a driver. I talked to the chief of police last night at the county town hall, and the county Albemarle is looking to add 6 police officers in the budget, but none of it's for traffic. It's like, why? Look at the freaking numbers. We're not. We talk so much about gun violence, which is such a big problem in our country and our community, but so many more people are dying on our roads right here in Charlottesville, Albemarle, and nobody seems to. We just accept it, and it's crazy. It is very scary and crazy. Sorry. I'd also offer my theory. I think that fundamentally, I think a lot of what we've seen when you mentioned about COVID, we have a huge tension in our country, in our history, who we think we are, about our individualism and our community. And those bashing up, the Tocqueville and all that history about, the barn raising and everything. We're community. Don't make me take, public health things that are good for our country. And that is bashing up big tension and antisocial behavior. People is like, I can do whatever the hell I want to. Is a very powerful force in our community in our country right now, my theory. I have another question about the other, so I think this.
Policy board meeting, there was a very similar discussion. I think someone said sort of an entitlement, attitude towards a lot of drivers out there. And so, I think you all are in line with discussions that happened the last time this got presented in policy
last night. Did share a story, but anyway, I think what to me is really interesting about this is it is a part of the macro. Technology can do so much for us, which can be really cool and awesome and life-saving, but it can be really scary. And a lot of people in Charlottesville, Albemarle particularly, are really scared about the police state component. I don't think that's not an isolated conversation. So I think that's really interesting. It'll be interesting how that is managed, if this indeed can be shown to be a useful tool that can survive in the rain and different terrible things like that in our country. So I'm also just curious, when you said it was a VDOT policy, not Cape video, because I'm also always trying to learn about VDOT. Is that VDOT executive director making that, or is that General Assembly policy?
This is VDOT agency policy. This was not imposed by the General Assembly.
So it could be changed. Our political environment also is a little scary for a lot of people these days. And, who knows what might happen at the General Assembly level with Kings over VDOT. So I think it's kind of a question, a comment, it's something I think our community is concerned about. And I'd like this kind of group to maybe be something that can help think about those types of bigger macro policy level decisions about how, because there is so much going on in the country, it's hard to monitor what happens at the General Assembly and state level, even for those of us that are engaged citizens by choice. I find it very overwhelming. So as this continues, it'd be interesting to see how that gets monitored to make sure the things that are being expressed about concern.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the aspects that's being considered in the project if we move forward, is like, okay, we do have all these policy level concerns with the video sensing products. Is that something where those are significant enough that we're going to go to like a LiDAR product that maybe doesn't perform quite as well, gets us partway there, but it doesn't have some of these concerns. And so I think part of it is understanding the technology, where the capabilities that are out there, and then weighing it in aggregate at the end about what's a good solution for future deployment.
Yeah, so I know that like VDOT is running this study and they don't have the policy, but you also said like Paul's Church purchased some of these systems, and so they could hold on to the data.
Yeah,
like
what Falls Church chooses to do is a city policy, not our
after it's
policy.
been validated, Albemarle County could choose to purchase these systems. Yeah. Thank you. Woo.
That's good.
Were there any other comments, or we could move on to the, where are we at? The staff updates and meeting, yeah. I think we had Gorian, that's how you say it? Yes, thank you. Great.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I apologize for not being in person today. I'm homesick. I will start my staff updates for the Safe Streets and Roads for All. I'll start with the roadway safety roundtable for farmers and rangers, as well as the meeting with the Virginia Wildlife that we hosted. So with the help from the Virginia Farm Bureau, we hosted a roundtable discussion with the farmers and rangers from the region to discuss farm vehicles, roadway safety concerns, and to come up with potential solutions. The meeting was held on Thursday, February 27 of 2025. We had a very valuable discussion. We got a lot of feedback about the safety concerns when it comes to farm vehicles and how it impacts transportation safety, not just in one county, but for most of the region. On March 12th, we met with the representatives from the Virginia Wildlife to discuss the impacts of wildlife vehicle collisions, which is also a major safety concerns while traveling. Even though not many fatalities and serious injuries have been captured in the reporting, we believe that we gathered very good feedback as well. So both feedbacks from the Farmers and Rangers Roundtable and the meeting with the Virginia Wildlife will be included in the draft safety action plan. The next item will be speaking of the draft safety action plan. So the project team met with staff from each of the jurisdictions to review and discuss prioritization criteria, data from the existing conditions report, and how potential countermeasures could look like. We also discussed the board meeting expectations. So the draft action plan is scheduled to be completed by the end of this month. And the next step would be to present in front of each of the respective boards and ask them to adopt the plan. I also want to mention that the discussion with the staff from the jurisdictions were very valuable because they ensure the comprehensive safety action plan is tailored to each locality's transportation safety needs, but also maintaining a regional approach to improving roadway safety. The last thing I will talk about is the City of Charlottesville demo project, which brings me to this slide. So I mentioned in my formal presentation that the City of Charlottesville provided additional funding for a project demo, which is an implementation project within the city. In coordination with the city staff, the location was identified at the intersection of East High Street, Mid Avenue, and Stewart Street. The first part of the process was to host a public meeting to seek feedback from the residents in the area on 3 proposed implementation projects that are focused on improving safety at the intersection. The meeting was held at the Burnley Moran Elementary School in the city on February 25th. We also had an online survey that closed on March 7 with around 360 responses. If I feel like if I go into the details of the 3 concepts, it's gonna take a lot of time, so I'm trying to be mindful of the time we have for the meeting. But I want to say that option 2 was the one that was selected by the public based on the survey, which is the Mid Avenue 2-way and northbound at High Street, which will likely, by the answers, will make the largest safety improvement at the intersections, which was then followed by option 3. So the next step would be to present the 3 concepts at the April 21st City Council meeting, with the goal that the council will make a decision on which concept they want to implement. So, but with that being said, taking the public feedback into consideration. So the project is said to be implemented in the summer. It potentially could take 60 to 90 days, but then we will seek the feedback from the public once again to see how the implementation project works and to see if it had made any safety impact. So the implementation project will serve as an example in the safety action plan, as an example of one of the types of implementation projects that could be applied for in the future by each jurisdictions. As you know, the goal of the draft safety or the safety action plan is to enable implementation to enable all localities to apply for implementation projects. That concludes my staff update for SS4A. Are there any questions?
Does the city have plans to do future sort of these like lower cost implementations to test out different safety improvements? I've seen one, they have one at Summit Elementary School right now, and then this one. Is this part of like a broader plan in the city, do you know?
So no, this is specifically just for that intersection, and it's not like for a broader plan. It's specific to that intersection. If that was your question.
I do hear BPAC meetings, and Tommy and Ben from the city reported at the Charlottesville Alliance Transportation Work Group yesterday that there is a lot of quick build is misleading, but things that they've got all kinds of areas where they figure they just get striping and plastic that that you can just, which isn't great, but has been shown often better than nothing to get people's attention. And there's part of the city budget, and the city manager's all in, and so I don't. Maybe do you know more, but as I understand, there is quite a few plans to try to get some smaller short-term things done now.
Yeah, especially after their pedestrian fatality was out in the fall. Yeah, they really prioritize finding those opportunities. Yeah, and then they also during I guess the last couple of years, they've also had a lot of bus shortages, so they've had a lot more students walking to work. So they've also been working through their Safe Routes to School program to try to do, like, a lot of these aren't necessarily like transportation, like VDOT standard transportation type things, but trying to get like, paths put down with what's the like kind of like really soft like mushy asphalt that you put down in martyrs really fast that maybe won't hold for very long, or won't be like a high construction standard, but they can do it really quickly and inexpensively. So things like that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the next item is the next CTAC meeting will be in this very room in May.
Yes.
May 19th, 2025 at 7 p.m.
Yeah, that'll be in person again.
Yep.
Do you remember when we're gonna have one virtual meeting or two?
I believe it's 2, but we can double check. And you will need to choose whichever date that is and fit that up.
I thought that
Is
had
it?
been selected.
I can double check. I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah.
I think we usually select the one. Yeah.
You think you?
Totally forgot about it.
We didn't hear what you said.
We
Sorry.
don't, at least when I was chair, we did not go into the future anymore.
Yeah, I
So it's
don't
all-
remember from the top of my head, but we
Yeah.
can confirm. But if you know that date in mind right now, we can set it up. I don't know.
May 19th. Something is up.
I think May 21st.
I'm sorry, this is what you just said. I was trying to figure
Sorry,
that out.
yes.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, 21st, that's true.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
It's a Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you. Great. And next we have Sandy, the VDOT, or
Yeah, we don't have a lot of substantive information to update you all on tonight, but the biggest thing is we do have a better map of the locations for the planning studies that we're working on right now. We're doing it's called STARS, Planning Studies Strategically Targeted Affordable Road Solutions is what STARS stands for.
Wow.
Everything at VDOT has an acronym. But this is provided by, this is planning research funding that's provided by the Transportation Mobility and Planning Division at VDOT. So we have one that is underway in the city of Charlottesville, mostly looking at the Ridge, McIntyre, Water, West Main intersection right there. The study area on the map is a little bit bigger than that, but really we're looking at solutions for that intersection. So we had a site visit a week and a half ago where we walked the site with the consultants and the city of Charlottesville staff and talked about kind of what challenges they see, what opportunities there are. And then we are going to be launching a survey starting on March 24th, running through April 7th. So VDOT will be doing a marketing campaign. We reached out to the MPO and to the city of Charlottesville. So, you know, well, I'll try to remember to send a link out for you all to circulate among the committees. But if you can help get the word out to take the survey, that would certainly be helpful. And then the two other studies through the STARS program, the STARS studies are all in blue. So it's that whole corridor along 29. We're breaking them up into two studies. One is from basically the hydraulic intersection up to Woodbrook. That's the lighter blue, and then the darker blue is looking mostly at the Emmett Street intersection or interchange. We those are bigger studies, the more complex, so it's taken us a little bit longer to get those going, but hopefully those will be launching pretty soon. And then we have two pipeline studies. The difference between STARS and pipeline is really, for all intents and purposes, is just where the funding for the study comes from. But the pipeline studies were just, the funding for those were just authorized by the Commonwealth Transportation Board at their meeting yesterday. So we'll be starting to work on those pretty soon. One of those is going to be relooking at the DDI at 5th Street with I-64, and hopefully doing some value engineering to get a more competitive smart scale application to figure out how we can get that project funded. And then the other one is going to be looking at 29 at the 118 interchange. So where there's where you're coming up 29, and if you're going north, you have to make a left turn to get onto 64. They're closing that, but if you're coming southbound and making a left to get onto 64 going east, that backs up a lot. There's some pretty significant safety concerns, so we're hoping we can find some solutions to fix operations and safety of that.
That was a pretty new change for that one too. It's just a couple of years old.
It was. So what happened is that there was like a full clover leaf that was there, and so they removed one of the loops, and that resulted in that left turn coming from 29 southbound going on to 64 eastbound, and that created. It solved the problems on 64, but it created some additional challenges on 29. So, do you have anything you want to add, Chuck? There somewhere.
No, you pretty much covered it. Like I said, there was a really bad weave issue on 64 between the two loop ramps. So by moving that, closing the one loop ramp and creating the southbound lefts, we eliminated that weave conflict. But over time, it's created an issue on 29 southbound. Part of it is the weave issue from the Fontaine ramp to make the left onto 64, as well as the traffic southbound having to merge over into the left lane to make the left-hand turn. And to compound that is the turn lane. Southbound turn lane is not that long because of the bridge. So we didn't have that much distance to actually put in a significant turn lane. So there's only it's dual lefts, but it's the turn storage length that's pretty short there. So it backs out pretty quickly out into the through lanes, and then it just starts to back up from there. So hopefully we can come up with a solution that's going to solve that issue with the queuing and possibly move the conflict further south, so where we can create more storage for that movement, and that may resolve the issue, but we don't know until we start studying it. We're also going to look at evaluation of the park and ride lot there at Teal Lane to see if we can improve that and make it better and provide more utility. So that's pretty much it for that one.
Couple follow-up questions on that 2964 intersection since we're talking about it. One is I hadn't heard anything for a while about the lawsuit that was filed by the family of the gentleman who was killed in a crash there. Do we know where that stands? And then the other is I just figure it has got to be just ungodly expensive to build a regular right exit from 29 and then a bridge going up over 29 to then merge with 64 East. I know bridges are always very expensive, but that sure does seem like something better than just having traffic back up for a mile and a half.
Yeah, if you go back in history, in round one of Smart Scale, we submitted a full rebuild of the interchange, and it was $175 million. And it was like one of the worst scoring projects in the state.
Yeah.
So subsequently, we've gone back and tried to break it down into pieces and complete what we can do within the funding and get the benefit score we can to actually get funding.
Yeah.
So that's the crux of what we're trying to do is try to come up with something that's going to fix the problem with the best benefit and the least cost. So it's not an easy task to do.
Have we heard the status of that lawsuit lately? I think that just was one of those things that pointed out how kind of gnarly that intersection is, even if the lawsuit's not going to land.
I don't know anything about that, so.
Okay, no worries.
News, so I think the last article was late last year.
What's the timeline for these studies?
Hopefully, pipeline definitely will be ready for Smart Scale next round to have applications. Hopefully that's the goal with the STAR studies as well, and at least Fifth Street will. The 29 studies, they're just a little, the ones north are just a little bit later getting started. And so our hope is that we'll be ready for those, but we also want to take our time and make sure we, aren't rushing through our process at the expense of finding the best solutions that we can.
When do you start on Smart Scale again?
Like this fall, Chuck?
We'll be starting to look at stuff and working out, setting up meetings with the localities, probably starting late summer, early fall, to identify possible locations for Smart Scale applications that they may want to consider.
To be honest, we haven't stopped working on them for this.
That's what all these studies are for. So to try to look at other areas where we have issues that need to be addressed and come up with solutions that the locality can resubmit or submit.
Can you either you give an update on some of the Smart Scale? And I can never remember year 3, 4, 5, 6 doesn't resonate with me, but there was a bunch of different things that were going to be done in Albemarle County that were going to be done in this time frame, such as Rio Belvedere intersection is the one that, because I was again at a town hall meeting last night, everybody knows that I'm involved in transportation and want to know when that intersection is going to be fixed.
I might have some, I might have some notes on that.
For me, I'm trying to think. Rio and Belvedere. That one is one of the bundles. I'm not sure exactly when its timeframe's going. But I know that's Belvedere, and then it's also bundled with the roundabout at Park Street or Rio Road East. So I think they're going to go together. And I'd have to check with Hal to find out what the schedule is on that bundle.
You can report that back to this committee. I
Okay.
talked a couple months ago that, one of the things it feels to me like we can be is to be a conduit of people, the community and what's going on for people who cannot pay attention to as much things. And again, maybe you all don't, people ask me these things consistently. I'm like, I feel like I should be able to have an answer to help do the role that I think we're expected to do here.
Yeah, I think Belvedere was funded in round 4. So it's probably, that would have been 2020. So it's probably going to go to advertisement in 2020 next year.
A year ago, we were told that that was already being started.
Well, because it was bundled together with a bunch of projects and going out as a design build contract. So those work a little different than our regular contracts. So that's why I'm not positive when it's going to go.
Okay. Well, yeah,
Okay, yeah, this is part of the design build bundle 2 in Albemarle County. It includes, let's see, includes a bunch of things on there. This is actually, VDOT has, like, the Culpeper District has a project webpage that gets updated pretty easily, but that's probably a good, like, first place to go to.
Yeah, but it often, it just says like it's, you know, in transit. It doesn't, there's no kind of like, it'll start in fall of this year or spring of next year. It's a very, the last time I looked at it, it was not a helpful.
Okay, well, it says like the estimated completion date is fall winter of 2027. I don't know when it's gonna go to construction.
Okay. You're just getting deeper into something that I haven't seen, so maybe you can give me a tutorial after.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I might have more words to them.
Yeah.
Do we happen to know when the roundabout that John Warner is going to be started?
That's part of that same bundle.
Is that part of the same bundle, huh?
Correct, yeah.
So move on to the roundtable updates. Folks want to go around and share anything?
Yeah, as we do that, I will also pass this on. This is a list of all the members, except for one member here. Just confirm with us your preferred email. And if you have her number, I think I don't have everybody's number, just to make sure we can follow up with when we need to follow up. But also just to bring to your attention, I think there are 3 members whose terms will expire too in May 2025 and in March 2025. So unfortunately, we didn't catch that up last meeting. So we will need to talk about that maybe in the next meeting or even now as we go around and do our roundtables. Yeah.
So I would also like to say, like during the MPO Policy Board meeting, they have everybody go around, they're the roundtable at the end of it. And if we had anything from the CTAC that we would like to share at the Policy Board meeting, I think it might be nice to, if anybody had anything they would like for me to share that was takeaways from these meetings, I would love to have a more formal process for gathering that. So if anybody had anything.
I'm happy to report, but I mean, I think I may have missed the most recent meeting while I was traveling, so this may have been discussed then, but it seems to me sometime in the last couple of meetings, Christine had mentioned that the policy board had been starting a conversation about what the purpose of this group was. Does anybody remember that? And I may not be framing it quite right, but trying to, and what we could be doing for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would love, we could, in the next meeting, we could go through the bylaws and we could see how they're written. They haven't been updated since 2013. It doesn't include like the virtual, component to anything. And so it might be worthwhile to go through the bylaws and to propose any changes that we might want to make to those.
Sure, and I think it would be helpful to hear. I don't know who would ask Christine of, I feel pretty clear that she said there was a policy board discussion about CTAC and what role we could be playing in that, and that would be something that would come back to us. And I'm getting a lot of blank stares, other than a little nodding heads. Yes, something, but it doesn't sound like it's been resolved, and it just, it comes up periodically of, why are we here?
Well, I guess Christine will definitely hear your question, and if there is an answer, Christine will definitely circle back. Nonetheless, we should put the bylaws on the agenda like suggested.
I mean, we're here to provide comment, to represent our communities and to provide comment to these program updates and this. And so we can think more clearly, every individual here could think about their, the communities that they represent and how they wanna to vocalize those and how they wanna share information about transit from these meetings to their communities. And we could be more active in those, yeah. But the purpose is laid out clearly in the bylaws, and if we wanted to and I don't know, inhabit those more fully, and I think that we're welcome to.
I
Yeah.
support that. I mean, maybe when I'm bringing up a purpose. I'm not sure how else to say it, but that the policy board and then. Wondering if we can be more about, I'm not sure how else to frame it, I'll leave it at that.
I don't think we have to wait for the policy board to tell us what to do.
Well,
No?
I mean, the policy board is following, I mean, we're advisory, I mean, advising to who from to what. I mean, the policy board is the group that's really, like, so it seems to me. We could have input on that, but it seems to me they're the decider. Maybe I'm wrong about the process, but.
Well,
I mean, yeah, maybe somebody else can speak to
Seems
this.
to me they've got the power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a non-voting role on the policy board, like I attended the meeting last month. And it was to like provide comment and advice in an advisory capacity.
right.
And we can provide more of that, but it is up to them how they take that into consideration.
And we've gone to them on certain topics and, you know, against something they're proposing, and they said, thank you, and did it anyhow. We played our role to basically say, hey, there's some concerns from CTAC about this, it was about changing smart scale. And we had our voice heard, and they can choose to listen or not.
I don't remember that example, so thank you, that may have been before my time, or maybe it just went past me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How are we as far as, like, do we have open positions we need to fill? Are we like half stocked, or are we fully stocked as
It
far as?
was 5 from the city and 5 from the county. And then, I mean, that's
2.
what the full
And then 3 from the MPO.
3 from MPO, yeah.
So it's 3, 4, 5, 6,
So-
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 people.
There,
5 plus 5 plus 3.
and then I did see in the bylaw, I did review the bylaws.
Good, good.
So if you miss, I think it was 2 meetings in a row, then you're off the unexcused meetings. And so I don't know if there's anybody that's not been attending regularly, it might be off of the board, but that's something to consider also.
I just remember a couple of years ago, it got real lean for a little while, and we were like, okay, so it's just like.
That's how Diana called
It's
me,
reviving.
at least one other person, because she found out there's 2 empty Albemarle seats
Yeah.
Yeah,
a year and a half ago. Yeah.
I did also. I think this was at the policy board meeting, that we're supposed to be representing like the diversity of the communities, like through the different boards. And then I think unfortunately that Jose was the only person of, well, and Donna, sorry, were the only people of color on the boards, like as voting members representing the community. So I don't know if we wanted to like consider outreach when there is time to select new members, like have a broader diversity of input into the meeting.
The elected bodies select people, correct?
Well, you have to apply, so I don't know. Yes, it is true, the elected body selects people, but
we could do outreach.
Mhm.
Got it.
that
So
was just a
that'd be
consideration.
Future discussion, because I don't know what people's terms are up to know.
Mhm.
Well, it's on that paper.
Yeah, it's right for.
As someone whose last meeting is tonight. Yeah, I take this maybe as a grain of salt, but I think like to what you're asking, and providing.
Meeting to leave time.
I think we can provide, this body can provide probably more like official, like have more official stances that can be provided. I think that one example was, we were all in pretty much in consensus in that meeting, but like, I'm not sure in my term that we really, aside from maybe like once or twice, taking a vote to like have a firm stance that we could then deliver to whatever body you want to deliver to, whether it's the MPO or even to like city council, like Charlottesville City Council, to say, hey, we want to emphasize diversity, like racial diversity here, so can you do that? And then maybe get like an official kind of report back on what the results may have been. You know, we know that like they did what they did anyway, but if some way we could force some kind of like response, I think that might be helpful as far as like trying to figure out how this body can be more effective, like more effect change some of the change that our community wants, right?
It's also, I don't know if this is a positive or a negative, but you know, most of the time, the things presented to us are very well thought through, so it's not that they're controversial, it's not like we're saying, you know, so there's not too much to, I think we're generally in agreement with most of the things after some clarification, so I think that's a positive, as opposed to if every meeting there was something like, that's terrible, we need to raise this up to the policy board. So somewhere there's the right balance of providing enough feedback to just not having any impact at all.
And there is an opportunity here, for example, like the I-64 exit 118. So there's a case where the ideal solution was a grade separated DDI, which cost $175 million. So yeah, that was that in an ideal world where money was not an object, that would have fixed all the problems, but don't have all the money in the world. So the challenge is on a limited budget, how can you fix that? I mean, and VDOT is in the process now of searching for answers for that. So if anyone on the committee wants to propose a design, like me, I mean, I'll give it a shot.
I appreciate your ability to do that.
That's good.
So let me ask also then, since you're just saying, since terms are kind of, we're not all on the same terms.
Right, yeah, it's random.
Nothing personal, we're all. I didn't mean it that way. We're not all on a calendar year term, people's terms are ending like 5 or 6 different times, depending on when we started here. So is it our responsibility, or is it the board and the board of supervisors, city council responsible to make sure we have an opening? And if it's only, are you eligible for a second term? Acclamation.
According to the bylaws.
Yes, you're eligible.
Yeah.
Second one,
You can
but you
stay on until you've been replaced.
Exactly. I was gonna read that. Yep, you will see that next week in the,
So is that-
it's
and-
continuous.
Your responsibility as chair, or
Continuous.
is that the city?
It is your responsibility when your term is up. If you want to serve again, you have to apply. So for us in Albemarle County, you just go on the Albemarle County website and you say, I'd like to be appointed to this board.
I guess my question is who's monitoring that? It's like, okay, somebody doesn't apply. And
The
and
clerk.
the case happened, a bunch of seats.
No,
opened up,
you'll get a letter from the county clerk and said your term is expiring about 2 months in advance. And so then they encourage you to reapply if you can.
So I'm looking for the step beyond that. They've sent me that, I ignore it.
Well,
County clerk responsible for that.
The city and the county advertise the vacancies on their boards.
Yeah, if you don't respond to that, then they're gonna go and try to find someone else to.
And if nobody applies, we get to a point that some of the seats were open.
Yeah.
And nobody seemed to know that.
Yeah.
For some period of
You
time.
can use me as a test case. I think I saw mine expires in May, so I'll let you know if I get a.
Well,
Did you get a letter?
I did.
Yeah. I mean, we could advertise that there's gonna be vacancies and try to find people to fill them. I don't see that there's anything that forbids us from doing that.
Well, to your point about representation in the community, that's what kind of led to it, is who's trying to do that work.
Well, yeah, the best way to do that is if you know somebody that has an interest, then you can sort of encourage them to apply and if there's some vacancies coming up, so. Yeah, it's more a case most of these bodies are like that. It's usually a case of it's hard to find people that are willing to do it rather than there's a surplus of people that are.
Yeah, I'm happy to continue on the board if you'll have me, so just.
And I can just make a comment. I know we were planning to do this next month. Next meeting, the bylaws reads in section 10, a 3-year term shall be continuous except under the following conditions. A member's unexcused absence for 3 consecutive meetings shall be considered as a de facto resignation. The committee may vote on dismissal of that member after 3 consecutive unexcused absences. Yeah. So my understanding, it shall be continuous unless those conditions are there. So, but again, next meeting, we go in depth into that.
Yeah, I think that means within your 3-year term.
Right.
Right, yeah.
A 3-year term, yeah.
Yeah.
Like within, what do you mean?
Yeah, I think that specific rule that you're talking about is talking about basically someone stepping down within the 3-year term they were.
Oh, not at the end?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we definitely need to revise these bylaws.
The bylaws do allow somebody to continue past their term if their seat has not been filled by somebody else before that. So if you wanted to, and
Yeah.
there hasn't been a new
That's the
appointee,
whole
you could
point.
continue to. No pressure for me at least.
I can come with Cora for next meeting.
There you
But in the interest of having following up on Greg's idea of us taking a stance on something, I was wondering if we could take a stance on encouraging Lee to redesign 29 and 64 by next meeting. Is that cool? I'd like to see those plans.
There's some ideas out there.
Yeah, right. No, and I appreciate the discussion on terms too. I think it's pretty common practice on boards and nonprofits to have someone continue until there's a replacement, just so you don't end up with a depopulated committee.
Anyone attending virtually, did anyone want to add anything else during the roundtable updates? Take that as a no. Are there any additional matters from the committee or the public?
I think it'd be good to identify the member of the public that was here. We don't know if you want to state your name and come over here or over there.
Yeah.
So they can hear you, I think.
Yeah, sure. I'm Adam Stevader. I am a UVA student. I am a 3rd-year urban planning major. I'm taking a class in local politics, and there's an assignment in the class to attend the local board meeting. And I chose this one because I want to do a career transportation plan.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Oh, that explains why we had some undergrads at the Rio 29 Community Advisory Committee a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. It's there.
Well, if there's no other meetings, then we will be adjourned.
Thank you so much.
Would you get a gal?
I just think.
Come on, let's make this real. Just give me a water bottle. You need some.
I
Had a nicer sound, but usually.